Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of the Pixel Trash Podcast. I'm your host, VJ Preziosi, and joining me on this episode is my buddy Sean Conway. Sean is a comedian from Pennsylvania that I met at an open mic back in October. He's a multi-talented dude. He's a comedian, he's an actor, he's a singer, and he's working on a project right now that's going through Kickstarter. So here's a quick clip of Sean's stand-up, and we're going to get straight into the podcast.
I'm not affiliated with any Greek life, like frats and sororities, not really my thing, but I've always been confused by Greek life. Like, the thing about it is that Greek life has a reputation of binge drinking, hazing, sexual assault, and it's also the name of an entire country of people. I've never been to Greece, but it just bears the question, is that what Greece is like? And if so, what the fuck is going on over there? Like, are people just blacking out on the street? Like, are they not raising their youth, they're just hazing their youth? Like, they don't have baptisms, they just have like initiation? You just like roll up to the baby's crib, oh, it's a pussy! You're gonna shut that down in apple juice, chug, 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 woo! After that, no, you're one of us. You're part of Greek life. You're in Greece now, bitch! You think you're sucking titties now? Greek life! I taught you the whole fucking alphabet. You just gotta learn, bitch. Yeah, never been to Greece.
But all right, joining me now is Sean Conway. Sean, how the hell are you, dude?
What's up, man?
Yeah, me and Sean, actually, we just did a show together on Saturday in Bensalem, PA at, Water's Edge, Comedy on the Crick.
Yeah, man.
It was a good time. They were a chatty bunch, though, right?
Yeah, they're wild, dude. But they're fun, and there's many of them.
How many of those shows have you done now since they came back?
Dude, I have done... Since they've come back from the pandemic, I've probably done, like, every other, just because I've gotten lucky with some acting gigs now that COVID is kind of loosening up a bit. But I've probably been to like 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah, and you're doing stuff there outside of just Comedy on the Crick, right? You're doing stuff with Matt Bridgestone. Yeah,
I was in AC. I did a spot up there 2 weeks ago. That was a ton of fun.
Where his AC Comedy Club?
Yeah, at Tropicana Casino.
Oh, yeah. Wow. The casino gigs are usually like a little weird situation because it's this weird mix of, at least originally, because I went to I did a show at Bridgestone at the Taj Mahal, and it was like a casino and a strip club. It was like this weird mix of old people and perverts. Nice. So I haven't seen the new setup firsthand, like what he's got now, but I remember seeing a video from one of my friends, and it looked pretty decent. It actually came across more like a diner or bar show than an actual like casino.
Yeah, well, first off, the place is called Kiss Kiss Nightclub. So I can understand that people would mistake it for a strip club. And that's what I said when I first like got on stage. There was this guys, like 9 of them in like suits. It's like, are you telling me that they came to watch us do stand-up? Well, like they're wearing like their AC hoodies. Like I'm wearing like, I'm not naked. You know what I mean?
Right. But when the way I met you at the Triggered Radio open mic in the Levittown parking lot, because for you guys who don't know, like the open mic scene for the last since COVID has been very hit and miss in a lot of ways, but the one that they were doing in Levittown was actually like a pretty good open mic because there was actually an audience and we had 2 pretty competent hosts running the shit, and we could actually like get a good gauge on material because so many of the mics, at least in Jersey, I don't know if it's the same for you over there, but we have like, you go to a mic and it's just all comics and it's like, oh, well, you guys can identify the writing tricks. You're going to know what's up and you're going to go, oh, okay, I see what you did there. I'm not laughing, but I see what you did there.
Yeah, I think that because COVID, because everyone is so excited to get back into the swing of things, that the open mics have actually been almost a little bit better because people are like, I just want to see anything. So
right.
you see like a couple people, and even like the comics themselves do pay attention a little bit more because it's like so rare to see anything live.
Yeah, well, when you have an actual turnout, it's like, holy shit, we are enjoying it. Because the Water's Edges shows we've been doing, there were like 60 people. Like, it got so big in one room in the cabin that we actually had to go to that, what, the fucking gazebo they have back there, whatever the fuck it is. Which
Reno.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of liked the back room a little bit better because the vibe of it had like that like log cabin feel to it, and it was like, I don't know, something about warmer lighting always like amps the crowd up more. Ever since they got to the back gazebo with that white churchy kind of lighting, it's still good. It's still a great time and it fits more people, but it does have like work a little bit more to get the crowd amped up.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I like the smaller space better. I've always liked tighter spaces.
Well, yeah, because you want a low ceiling because that's why so many comedy clubs are in freaking basements and shit. You want to contain the laughter, and that just echoes throughout and makes everything sound better, like acoustically. But when you have like a high ceiling, it's a little weird. But you know, you can still work with it if you have like the right lighting and setup. Like I saw Sam Morril at the Stress Factory last month, and they have this giant ass fucking tent. Like it's to the point where it's like, how is this even still considered outdoor? I feel like I'm like just inside. But you know, they had the warm lighting because Vinny Brand knows what he's doing. He's got warm lighting. He's got it's a backdrop, but it's like a brick pattern backdrop, like, you know, the classic shit. And it was still a great show, even with all the weirdness around it. We've gotten lucky with the Water's Edges shows that we can still jump into it. And when we were doing the parking lot mics, I remember you stood out to me because so many of the comics there, I mean, we had like, you know, the old hacky dad stuff with some guys who, you know, were just, and the newcomers. And then a lot of the more experienced people, we were just, you know, we went off on being, you know, vulgar and dirty and just disgusting in a lot of ways. But you came up and you were like not clean or anything, but you were like very professional. You had your shit like down, and like it felt like, damn, this is like, I'm looking at a pro. And then you told me you've only been doing comedy like what? You said 2 or 3 years about?
Like 4 years, some
4 years. Okay.
moments.
Okay. Yeah. But even then, like your shit just like felt like so like rehearsed and perfect that I was like, oh damn, because that's why you stood out to me so much. Because like I'm looking at like guys like, you know, with my sense of humor, and it's just like, okay, you're just kind of a degenerate. But then you come up and I'm like, oh, okay, this is like a pro. Was that a vibe you were going for when you started? Or was that just who you are, kind of?
Dude, I mean, I've been doing theater for like 11 years. So like everything to me, it's like, gotta memorize my lines. You know, like those are my jokes. My jokes are like a performance, you know? I think of it so much like that. Whereas a lot of people, their first introduction to performing arts is at a shitty bar in Levittown. So,
yeah.
So like, you know, like the atmosphere that they start in is a little bit different. You know, I started at like Shakespeare and all that shit, and then I moved to dick jokes and, you know, all this other bullshit. Do you consider
that like beneficial for you, or was it kind of like a rude awakening when you go into like the filth, so to speak, like the more grimy club type humor? Because I remember growing up watching Comedy Central, seeing the theater shows on there, like on the Comedy Central Presents and all that kind of stuff. But then when you go to an actual comedy club or a bar, it's like such a different type of vibe, where it's like you watch a theater thing, you can get applause breaks just for making points and saying obvious shit. But in a club, you have to fucking work at it. So was that something you had to adjust to, or did you feel like you picked that up pretty quickly?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I'm still working on. Like I have the advantage of having good stage presence off the bat. Right. But I also, I struggle a lot with authenticity, because when I do my jokes, I'm always trying to say a joke that I think is funny, but it's not necessarily the right joke for me. So sometimes I'll say a joke and it's like, why does this guy sound like just an asshole? Right. You know? It just sounds strange coming from my mouth. It's like, that's because I'm doing a character who's doing a joke, not being Sean telling a joke.
Right. I've noticed that too, because I've done I think last month I did a show in the fucking hood. And I had actually a great set. It was mostly crowd work too, but then I listened back to the way I talked in it, and it was like this. I was definitely talking more slang than I normally do, because like, you know, I'm a little streetwise. My parents are from the hood, but like I'm not. So I'm like listening to me talk. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because I'm telling my regular joke, but in a kind of streetwise way. But but you feel like that struggles or that contrasts with your authenticity?
Yeah, the only time that you can, I mean, of course I'm working on it. I'm getting much better at it. Like I was really bad when I first started, but like you see the true Sean when somebody like says something that I roll with, like when I start doing like a little bit of crowd work and I get off the rails, especially when I'm in Levittown. Like I did a show for Bridgestone at Gleason's Bar in Levittown, PA, and like people start getting a little bit rowdy. I just start shouting. I'm like, you are fucked up right now. Give me your phone. I'm calling your boyfriend. You know, like just getting like absolutely nuts. And then that's when you see like a little more of my like rage. You see the genie come out of the bottle a little bit.
I noticed you were doing that a little bit on this past Saturday, because they were, like I said before, they were talking a lot this Saturday, and you definitely went in there. But once you got their attention, they listened to the rest of what you were fucking saying, because you went out towards the you were like what, third to last, right?
Yeah, third to last.
Yeah, so by that point, everyone's fucked up, and they're just like, "Is it over? Yeah, I got work in the morning. I'm gonna have a hangover."
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that was, I mean, I'm still saying that was a great show. I'm not trying to talk shit about Water's Edge. I fucking love it there. But I wanted to ask you, like, who are your biggest influences when you were starting out? Because you strike me as a John Mulaney kind of guy. I don't know if that's an accurate description, but that's what I get off of you. I don't know if you got any particular influences that really you went off on.
I mean, I would definitely say that if I had to compare myself to a comedian, I would say that John Mulaney is up there. But I actually, oddly enough, I'm really into like Bill Burr, and Anthony Jeselnik.
Oh yeah,
and
cool.
I think that I really like comedians who can do stuff that I really want to do, or I don't feel like I personally can do. So like seeing Bill Burr do like, you know, just like go off on crazy rants, and then seeing Anthony Jeselnik had this crazy like macho aspect to him and like almost dip into dark humor. That's like so different than me, and I'm like, man, I would love to do that shit.
I know how that feels, because like when I was coming up, I was like Bill Burr was like number one. I was really into Christopher Titus, Attell, and Doug Stanhope. They were like my biggest like influences. Oh, and Mike DiStefano. But you know, you see me on stage, and when I started out, I was definitely more into act outs and being over the top, and definitely kind of a little rambly. But like as I've gotten older, it's like that energy, I just don't feel it anymore. Even though I respect that type of humor so much, it's just not me. So did you feel like when you were starting out, like you tried to emulate these guys, and eventually you just kind of started growing into your own voice?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would agree with you that I also started with tons of act outs. And I think especially COVID actually cut that off a little bit, because when you only have this, it's all about the writing.
Oh yeah, with the Zoom stuff. Yeah, have you been doing a lot of the Zoom shows?
I mean, I was doing a lot of stuff when it was really bad, but now I've really tried to avoid as much as possible.
How did you enjoy doing those? Like, would you consider them good gauges?
Dude, I was doing some shit. Like I wouldn't just do Zoom. Sometimes I would do like people go on Instagram Live. So then you would just be like telling a joke, and then no one responded, and then you would get like, foom, haha, foom, lol.
Well, if you're doing it on Instagram Live, there's so many times where people are just scrolling through their feed, and they'll just pop up on your video, and you could just be in the middle of the joke. They won't know the setup. They won't know the premise. So when you get to the punchline, it could be a great punchline. You wouldn't fucking, wow, that's a dumb one, Instagram Live.
Dude, it is tough.
But I mean, like I said, it's getting better with we're getting I don't know, how is it with PA with the COVID stuff, because we're getting a lot more outdoor stuff going on now. Like we used to have to close everything by 10 p.m. but now I think they've lifted that restriction. Everything's going pretty good so far. Like the turnouts still aren't great, but it's better than what it was, and we can go later and there's more comedians. So is it kind of the same for you guys? Yeah,
no, I mean, we've had lots of great things open up. I mean, in terms of mics, you know, things are pretty consistent in Philly. You know, you're able to do a mic just about every night. And then there's shows popping up. Like I've been doing, you know, things here and there, trying to get more into Philly in terms of like actual shows. But I think that it's definitely really stepping back up, and I'm very excited to see it.
Which one is your favorite mic in Philly right now?
I really do like 2 Street.
Oh, really? I just saw Jay posting about that on Facebook. Is that good?
Yeah, and why it's good, in my opinion, is just like we were talking about with the room at Water's Edge. It's a tighter space, so everyone is kind of stuck together, so that everyone, when somebody laughs, it's like it's contagious. And I feel like people are listening, so you can really actually gauge if your jokes are working.
Oh, okay. So you said you were doing theater stuff when you were younger. Was stand up something that you really like kind of grew up with, or was it something you wanted to give a shot and then like just kind of fell in love with?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really look at any stand up until I was in high school.
Oh yeah.
Halfway through, I watched. I'm trying to think of like the specials. I think I watched like Bo Burnham and like Crystalia and like one or two other like comics, but I wasn't like a huge fan of it. And then when I got into college, there was a class called Art of Stand-Up Comedy. And I was like, well, that sounds cool as shit.
Yeah.
So I took that, and then like class of 30 people, and everyone gave up on it. And I was the only one who like kind of kept going with it.
So when you were starting out with stand-up, did how much influence did you take from that class? Did you really find it helpful?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And I still operate on the idea that you can teach comedy to people.
I was just about to ask that. Okay, cool. Because I was talking to, Mark Giobel. I don't forget how you say his last name.
I saw him.
Yeah, he was at the Water's Edge, and he was at the Levittown Mics, and he's just starting out. And, I was sending him, have you heard of Judy Carter's book?
No.
Oh, it's a book about, just learning stand-up comedy. It comes with, there's actually a workbook to go with it. And I sent it to him because he's just starting out. He's asking me for tips, and he was like, this is kind of like homework. I was like, yeah, but like, I agree with you. I don't believe that idea that you're either born funny or you're not, or you can't learn comedy, because there are definitely people that are more naturally inclined to do stand-up comedy than others, but it's still something you can learn. At a certain point, your natural abilities run out, and you're going to have to learn the tricks.
Yeah, what I think that you are born with that is genetic is you need to be born with the capacity to suffer. That's
very true.
You need to go to a mic and people to fucking hate you.
Yeah. What's your worst show you've ever done, or your worst, even beyond just a show, maybe your worst mic, worst set you've ever had?
One time, I mean, it's hard to even say if this was like counts as a performance. One time my friend like had a photo shoot, and she was like, oh, we're going to have you do stand up after. And I was like, oh, okay. So there's like all these random characters, like just like the people who live in the crevices of the earth are like coming to this little photo shoot. There's like 8 people. And then they're like, all right. And they all just sat on the floor and watched me do stand up as she filmed it. It was like the strangest shit ever. This dude was literally like on like a PSP. I don't even know who the fuck has those anymore. It's a PlayStation Portable. Would you play it as you're watching someone?
No, that's weird.
Dude, this is like the middle of the day, like 2 p.m., natural lighting coming in. And he like heckles me in the middle. He's like, that was a good joke. I'm going to finish this up real quick. I'm like, no one fucking asked, dude.
So how do you feel about how you are with hecklers? Like, do you feel like you've gotten a lot better at dealing with them? Like, do you have shit on standby for them?
I've gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
I have like little things that I prepare ahead of time. Like I love when people's phone goes, like when somebody's phone goes off, because I'm ready for whatever. I want them to answer that phone.
Oh yeah,
I can respond.
I did a set, Bar 13 in was it Delaware? Yeah, have you ever done that one?
I haven't, but I know I need to.
Yeah, it's a good room, but I was there this past week, and we had this redneck dude heckling like everyone, and luckily I was number 2 on the list, so the first comic went up and that guy just got shit, but I have my own jokes on standby, and then whatever I can piece together looking at this dude. So I go on stage and wait for him to say something. When he finally says something, I just unloaded on him, and it kind of saved my set, because it's an open mic, so there's new stuff that's not working, there's old stuff that's not working, whatever, but that was what kept my set going, was just shitting on him. But then you get to the point where fucking Otis goes on stage and just annihilates this guy. Like in the, I mean, were you there when he was digging into the guy who tried roasting the crowd at Levittown?
Dude, that was so bad.
Otis or the guy?
Well, I mean, the guy really deserved it because you should never start an open mic by saying, "I'm going to roast you guys." Also, it's my first time.
Well, the thing is, like, you can do that, but first of all, it's got to be funny. But also, you got to be able to fucking take it. If you're going to be able to dish it out, you got to take it. Like, he was getting legitimately offended. I don't even think what Otis was saying was pretty rough, but that's just getting to know Otis now. I'm like, that's just his personality.
That dude left too.
What's up? Oh, yeah, he did leave. He did leave because Otis just dug into him so fucking hard. But he went after this guy at Bar 13, like, so much harder to the point where I was like, Jesus Christ, dude, take it down a notch. But what would you describe as, like, your best technique for a heckler? I know you said you have a material on, like, standby, but if you see someone heckling throughout the show, do you go on stage and just initiate right away with them, or do you find it's better to wait?
That's a good question. If somebody has been consistently heckling throughout the night, unless I have a really good joke for it, I try not to give them the attention. I feel like sometimes you can get an audience to quiet down just by the way that you're like kind of addressing them. I see a lot of comics who will just kind of like ramble through, and like if people are talking in the audience, they'll keep rambling through. But if you hear people talking a bunch, you kind of have to dial back a bit, and maybe you can even say something to the audience, like poke fun at somebody, or just slow down and make it clear that like you're not going to keep going until they give you attention, like a teaching,
Right. Exactly. Like, do you ever do this? You have like a joke where it's like, it kind of bombs a little bit. So you go, okay, let me go to the audience, fuck with one of them and see if I can work myself back to a good set. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
What was the first thing you noticed when you transitioned from like thinking about comedy to actually doing it? Like, what was your rude awakening?
I mean, the thing about me doing comedy is it wasn't like I didn't go from thinking about it to just like, I'm going to do this open mic. Boom. Like right. I had like a couple classes to think, to really think about like, all right, guys, write down like a minute of comedy, think about this workshop with people. So it was like a pretty smooth transition. But I would say my first like actual open mic, it took a long time, dude. Like I would just be like stuck in class, like, with like a couple jokes, and I would never feel like they were going to work there. So I had to make like this super tight 5-minute set that I knew for sure that I could say, even if it bombed. I didn't care if it was funny. Like if people didn't like it, that's fine. I just knew that I could start it and end it. I knew exactly what to say.
So how often do you write things? Because I've had this issue where you write things that like, I personally don't think this is funny, but it's like a crowd-pleasing line. Because if you read a certain room, you're like, okay, they'll love this. I think this is hacky shit like that. I'm sure you've heard that Kim Kardashian, like all fours joke I've made at Water's Edge a couple times. I fucking hate that joke. It's so stupid. I do. I hate it. It's so stupid. It's so cheap. It's so hack. It's literally the first thought in my head when I read that news article. I didn't even like work it out in any way. I was like, fuck it, this will work. And it always crushes there. So do you ever have like material where like, I hate this, but I got to bust out Old Reliable for this room?
I try not to say jokes that I don't like generally. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think like, I mean, I always, if I'm in a town, like for instance, when I'm in Levittown, I'll always tell a Levittown joke, like, make fun of something, even if I'm like, this is kind of hacky, but the location alone is strong enough to be like, oh, I know what that is.
Oh yeah, I definitely done that in PA. Every time I'm in a different state, I just go to shitting on Jersey, which is so funny because I'm one of the few people that actually love New Jersey, but it's such an easy thing to shit on. Just be like, oh guys, New Jersey's beautiful, especially when it's in my rear view mirror fading away from me. I'm garbage. They love that shit. But so have you gotten? Do you feel like you've gotten a lot better at like reading rooms? Besides obviously like your hometown, like when you go somewhere and you're not like say first on the list. Do you scan the room and feel like, okay, I know what can work here?
Yeah. Usually if I'm not first, I mean, even if I'm first too, like, when the host is up, I try to find something to get me started. Like, I'll try to find one thing in the room that I can say, even if it's like not like hilarious. I think it's just a nice way to like open the audience. Like, hey, like we're both here.
Right.
People.
Right. It shows that you're present, because I've definitely seen a lot of comedians when they're starting out, they just go up and go straight into their set, straight into their written material. 1 second, the host is talking about midgets, and this guy comes up talking about his day job, not addressing anything. And it just feels like, dude, you're not here right now. You're not talking to me. You're reading a script. So you feel like you gotten good at just being present on stage.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that I've had to work on. And that's why it's so important to me to have that in the beginning, because I am one of those guys who did go through my script. And I still do. It's not like, I'm perfect, but I really try to get like something I can get in the room, because it just makes my first joke just so seamless.
Yeah, exactly. Because it feels so much more natural when you have like that joke that you want to work in. But like, say it's a joke about, I don't know, midgets, and you're like, well, how the fuck am I going to work this in this room? I'm going to have to feel the crowd out a little bit, somehow like draw them in, and then go to midgets. Because I've actually found a lot of the time that just regular crowds are actually pretty easy to figure out. Kind of like at a certain point, you notice the patterns that people have when they're in mass, but then you transition that to or contrast that to open mics where it's mostly comedians, and it's like, how the fuck do I do this with you guys? I'd have to like literally know half of you in order for this to work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why at open mics, it is genuinely practice,
Oh yeah. You just throwing everything to the wall and seeing what sticks. Since you're an actor, you said you struggled being present when you were at stage beginning, because I know a lot of times that's just like, you're doing your performance and you're trained not to look at the camera that's looking at you. And then with stand-up, it's like you got to stare direct. The audience is the camera. You got to look them in the fucking eye, and the camera's always changing. So you got to focus on a different person. So that was hard for you originally?
Yeah. I mean, I spent a whole decade being taught like you can't break what is called the fourth wall.
Right.
Now there are some plays that do, and it's stylistic, but yeah, like I had that idea. It's like basically I'm doing my jokes to a glass wall, and then you're hearing them, and I had to retrain my brain. Like, we're all in this room together. I'm just the one with the microphone.
I think I forget which book I read. It's like about comedy, but I forget the author, Stephen something, but he had this great point about theater acting, how he went to see a play and someone in the audience sneezes, and he made it a point like, the woman on stage did not even acknowledge that, did not say, God bless you or anything, because that completely kills what you're supposed to be doing. It ruins that, it breaks down that fourth wall. But with comedy, it's like you could just dig into that person for just sneezing, and you have to acknowledge it. Otherwise, it's just a little weird. Like when I saw Sam Morril, he was in the middle of a joke about, I think his first gay experience as a child or whatever. And then a cop car drove by with the sirens blasting, and without missing a beat, he went, oh shit. All right, I lied to you guys. This was actually last week, and it was with a 9-year-old boy. I'm sorry. But he had that shit on, like, just ready. So do you have stuff like just ready for like, I don't know, being present, or is that something you just work out in the crowd? Like, do you when you're in the crowd, do you put together a set in your head, or do you just have your written shit ready to go?
Yeah, like when I'm in the crowd, I usually like I know the jokes in my head. Like I could think of the list, and then I'm like, okay, wait, something just happened. All right, boom, got to add that to the front of the list. It's like, okay, so now I have 2 jokes and then the start of my set.
Okay. Have you ever had this happen where like you put together something good and you're like, oh, I can't wait to get up and use this, but then like say the person who was the cause of it leaves the room, or like goes away, and then it's like, oh, now I can't use this anymore. It was such a fucking killer line.
Yep. And I'm notorious for still telling the joke anyway, and then just not being as good.
Yo, same. I'm so guilty of that shit too, because like when you feel so good about it, you're like, I have to get this out. And also it still shows I'm present, even if it's now slightly dated, I guess. So what you did theater, did you come from a theater family?
No.
Not
at all.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, like my aunt was a singer, not like professionally, but like she sang in church and stuff. I just always loved movies, and then I got into musicals. I'm sorry, 7th grade. It was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and I played Mike TV.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Oh man, I can't see you as Mike TV because well, no, not really actually because he's such a like, well they're all little brats, but he's like the most like
He's
over the yeah he's like the most over the top ridiculous one. Wow. What how many plays have you been in then? You can't dozens.
Yeah, I've been in plenty of shit. I mean, well, that's the thing with acting is, that's what's fun about it is you get to play like different characters. Like,
what was your favorite one?
I mean, maybe a little cliche, but I mean, I did play Jean Valjean in Les Mis.
I knew that one was gonna come.
It's like how could you not say that was the best? I mean, it was insane.
How do you? I gotta ask you this now. How did you feel about the that Les Mis movie with Russell Crowe a couple years ago compared to the stage adaptation?
I mean, it grew on me.
It grew on you.
It grew on me, but like first seeing it, I was like, oh my god, dude. Like Hugh Jackman and I love Hugh Jackman, but Hugh Jackman like wouldn't use his falsetto, which is
yes,
like the head voice, so it would just be like, bring him home. I'm like, why are you saying like a Muppet, dude? You can just sing soft.
He can sing too, so that didn't make any sense to me. And then fucking Russell Crowe, Jesus Christ, he was sleepwalking that whole movie. Prisoner for 60 when your parole began. It's like, dude, can you care, please?
He's not that scary. It's just like, dude, like this is Hugh Jackman. You got to step up your game. Like,
yeah, come on. Did you watch a lot of musical movies growing up?
Honestly, no.
Really?
Dude, I mean, I never indulge in the things that I like doing. Like,
oh, yeah?
I ran track in high school. I ran it in college. Like I was a Division I athlete and I did not watch track.
Well, I mean, that one I think makes a little bit of sense because like, it's kind of like NASCAR. How many times can you watch them go in a circle before you're like, okay, I think I get the idea. So you didn't watch a lot of theater movies or musicals, I should say. That's interesting.
Oh. Yeah, the first time I went to Broadway, like to see a show, was halfway through high school, and I didn't like it. I actually would much rather prefer a show where I'm like in the front and is a smaller crowd. I would much rather prefer that than having the nosebleeds in like Phantom of the Opera. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I know how you feel about that. Sometimes the nosebleeds are good for like, I think they're good for stand up because you're there to listen to material, especially if it's like a comedian who doesn't do like a lot of act outs. But when you're in a theater environment, you do want to be close because there's so much that goes into it. There's the set design, there's the costume design, and of course the acting that you want to get a good gauge on. Because when I was in elementary school, we went to see this live performance of A Christmas Carol. And they were really fucking good. And we had great seats. So like that was one of my first exposures to live theater. And it was actually kind of like interesting because, when you're a teenager at that point and you've never really experienced it, you think of it as this stupid shit that women drag guys to and guys go so they can get laid. But when you actually see it in person, it's like, oh, there's an actual like craft to this and a technique to it. Do you feel like there's a stereotype with theater that just is, I guess, like back in the day, it was like, you thought of things like Glee and it's like, oh, this is kind of cringeworthy. But do you feel like that's going away now as more people are becoming, I don't want to say progressive, but more accepting of creative arts?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like when I was in middle school, of course, people made fun of me. They're like, oh, you're gay, like bullshit like that. But I think that maybe it's because I'm growing up like into, maturity. The people around me are mature. So it's like it's not weird anymore that I would be like an actor. I don't know if that's translating to middle school or if people in middle school are still like, oh, faggot. Like, I don't know.
That's a good question because like you see what they're growing up with on TikTok and stuff. And it's like, the Paul brothers, they're like they make some of the most garbage, heinous ass content I've ever seen. And kids watch it just fine as long as they don't say like an offensive word here and there, as long as they're not saying like, faggot or retard. Then it's cool. They can still tase that dead rat, but don't say faggot or retard. That's inappropriate. Right. So it's a weird idea to think like, how are kids growing up now, like where they're like exposed to like this garbage, like actions, like they just gloss over, but when it comes to certain words, then they tense up a little bit.
Right. Yeah. It's like the toxicity is still there, but it's like it just minus those like couple trigger words.
Right. So are your parents like, are they super supportive of like everything you've done, like creativity? Like, did it take them a while to get used to you doing all this performance art?
Yeah, my mom has always been super supportive, and she still is like the whole way. And my dad is very supportive too. He's very like traditional, like he's all about 9-to-5 jobs and stuff. So it's a little more tough for him to like get behind it, but he is still supportive. So I mean, I'm very blessed to have great parents who back me up.
Do you work a regular 9-to-5 job, or are you just strictly acting and performing?
So yeah, I've been door dashing to make some extra money. I do this driving route at night where I drive around picking up specimens from animal hospitals, and I drop them off at a lab. So it's some wild shit.
That's a lot more interesting than just picking up fucking Five Guys for the third time that week.
Yeah.
But I know DoorDash because my mom, she a school bus driver, but because most of the schools are still closed, she's been doing DoorDash and Grubhub, and she's actually been making a fucking killing on that shit, which is like surprising. But she also, my mom knows the neighborhood really well, so she knows where like the rich people are. So have you gotten good at that? Do you know like where all the good places are?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I know my shit with DoorDash, dude.
How long have you been doing that?
Probably like 4 months.
4 months? Okay. So like what were you doing before that? Was the like did you have like a regular job that COVID kind of just took out?
Yeah, I mean, I graduated college, and then I was off for a month, and then I worked as a teacher for like a summer camp, a theater summer camp.
Oh, okay.
At Bristol Riverside Theater. Yeah. And I'll be doing that probably again this summer, but that's only for a month, right? So after that, I picked up a job working at a retirement home as a food server. And, you know, it was great, but like the money just wasn't there. So
Right.
I left there, and then that's when I started doing DoorDash, and it's been great. You know, the money is great.
Do you enjoy teaching theater to people? Like how does that feel to be like, okay, I've learned it, now I'm teaching it to you? Is it weird to be on the other end of it?
No, I mean, I love it. Yeah. I actually, I mean, I teach like little kids, you know, like there are some like kids who are like teenagers, like 13 and 14, but I mean, it's like the basic shit, playing games, learning lines, very simple.
Then when you were growing up, did you want to, I guess you kind of touched on this before where you didn't indulge in the things you do. So you didn't really indulge in acting when you were growing up. Like I'm sure you watched movies, but when you were growing up, you weren't like, oh, I want to do that.
Movies, I would say, were like the only thing that I did love watching and doing. Like I loved acting in film, and I loved watching films.
Who's your favorite actor?
Right now, I would say Jason Bateman.
Oh yeah, really?
Love Jason Bateman.
What is it? Just that sardonic attitude that he has, where it's like he can snap at any moment, but he's holding it back with just pure sarcasm.
Dude, yeah, it's the same thing as with the comics. It's just that idea that he can play any role with just little fine tunes to his overall calm personality.
Yeah, I've noticed with a lot of actors, like they still feel like themselves, but they somehow completely change who they are. Even if it's just a little change they make, they somehow are a completely different person. Because I see Paul Rudd in a lot of things, and there's some things I see him in where I forget I'm watching Paul Rudd, even though he looks exactly the fucking same. I mean, he has since the 90s. He hasn't fucking aged either. But like, he just makes a little change to his personality in the movie. And it's like, I'm watching Paul Rudd, but it's like a different kind of dude, because you see him in like, say, role models where he's a fucking prick. He's an asshole. No one likes him. Contrast that to Ant-Man. He's like completely lovable and he's like schlubby, but that like, there's like almost no difference, like physically or personality wise. He just makes a slight change to himself and you buy it both ways. But then you compare that to actors who really go ham when it comes to changing themselves, like someone like Christian Bale, who just cannot decide on a weight. He just constantly goes up and down. And it's like, you really made an effort for it, but it's almost a little bit more impressive when someone can get a similar effect by just barely changing themselves at all.
Yeah, it's super impressive. And especially like I have been known to like overact a bit, especially because I come from theater, and
Yeah.
I really like doing comedy. So like to be able to tone it down is a big thing that I also work on.
I mean, it definitely. I feel like that would help your comedy too, because there are certain things you can do as an act out that maybe like, okay, I'm going a little too over the top here, and then there's other times where you're like, oh, maybe if I go a little bit higher. But I can see like how that can influence. One can influence the other. Like, do you feel like your brain just has to like switch gears when you're performing comedy and then performing theater and then performing just in front of a camera?
I mean, I actually think that both they've helped me out so much, especially comedy and film, because in both of those, it's authenticity is so important and being present. Because in theater you can get away with stuff. You're going a little bigger, so you can kind of get away with some stuff because the guy in row G isn't going to see that you had a bad day on your face. But in a film, if you're showing like that negative energy or any energy that isn't your characters, you can see it because the camera will pick that shit up.
Right, right. Do you gravitate more towards film acting or theater acting personally?
I mean, I've just started in film acting. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, like professionally, like theater, I did all throughout high school, all throughout college. And then film, I really just started professionally because, COVID, there isn't many theater opportunities.
Right.
So I'm still trying to figure out which one, but I think that film is where I'm going to be headed for now.
I feel like that's a natural progression too, because as you get older, like I have less energy than I used to have. Even though I'm like the healthiest I've ever been in my life, it's just like as I get older, I just get less energetic. I care less about act outs. I care less about like just general things because I'm just like I identify as tired, as the as the old joke goes. So I feel like when you transition to film acting, it makes that makes sense because theater acting, you're very bombastic, you're very over the top. But I've also noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this too. Have you seen any Korean movies?
No.
No? I've noticed with a lot of them, the actors, they go super cartoony. Even like in horror movies, like I saw hashtag Alive and Parasite. And when they're going like, when they're trying to do emotional stuff and going a little bit over the top, they go over the top. It's like borderline like Buster Keaton acting. It's like because it's just their style, like, and how the whole movie is done. Like you watch it and you just go, this makes sense within the world it's in. So it's interesting when you look at like acting like across the ocean or across the world, where it's like this is they're still considered high caliber actors, but the style they do with their filmmaking is just so much different than what we do. But so as an actor, have you felt like comedy or your acting career has put you more in connection or more in tune with your emotions, I should say? Because with comedy, for me, I felt like because, you have to build up such a tolerance and a thick skin when it comes to stuff that you almost become numb to certain things because you just build up that shell. Do you feel like theater and acting in general keeps you kind of grounded and in touch with your emotions and personality?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would definitely say so. Like when I do research for characters, I always try to come up with like a backstory and shit. So like I always have to have all those emotions available. And I think that with comedy, like I wouldn't say that like I'm like numb, I guess. I feel like I still have a lot of emotions available to me. But yeah, for sure. Like I actually comedy is probably the reason that I got my film agent.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, because when I had mentioned to them, when I was in the prospects of being represented, I had mentioned I was a comic, and he said something like film industry is really looking for stand-up comedians. I don't know if it's because like if stand-up comedians are an asset for filmmakers because they're able to be more present because they're so present in their live performances, or if it's because of like their improbability, like with crowd work. But
I think there's also an element where when you have a comedian do a dramatic role, people tend to notice that more than a dramatic actor doing a comedic role. Like you can see, like, I mean, not that he was like in super hardcore dramas, but like when Zac Efron was doing drama and then started doing comedy, people didn't really pay attention to it that much. But then you look at someone like Adam Sandler when he did like Uncut Gems, and people were saying that he got snubbed for an Oscar over that movie.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, that's the thing. That's what's funny is like people will think that they're a better actor because they've seen them do all these funny things and then they're doing serious, so they can see the range. But like with a dramatic actor, you don't always see the like that type of range if they're not doing comedy.
Which is interesting because like so many dramatic actors, like they have such incredible fucking range where it's like they transform themselves completely, but then sometimes people just take it for granted when they do a comedy role where it's like, oh, he was funny in this, but that's not what I like to see from him. It's like, it's still hard to act as a comic because you have to have timing, you have to have personality, you have to have charisma, and you have to pull all that from, you have to contrast that with the dramatic stuff you did. Like when people saw like Jim Carrey going from, comedic roles to like more dramatic roles, everyone was like all for it. But then after a while, people were getting stagnated on it, where they were like, "Oh, Jim Carrey, he's not fun anymore." And then he goes back, and then he goes back to comedic roles, and they're like, "Oh, Jim Carrey, now what happened to when he was really trying?" It's like, can this fucking guy win?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, dude. Well, I mean, he had such a distinct brand. He was like that crazy guy.
He was a cartoon character. But then you contrast that to how he was, acting in something like, say, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where he felt so grounded. But I just feel like dramatic actors, they don't get that same respect when they do transition to comedy because it's not as easy as people think it is. It's a lot of fucking, you got to feel it out. Like, I forget what the name of that movie was, but it was with Vince Vaughn and, I forget. It's called The Breakup, I think. I forget who the woman was, but she was like a, veteran film actor, theater actor. Contrast that with Vince Vaughn, who was like an improv comic, comedic actor. And apparently they actually really didn't get along on set at all because he would ad lib and stuff like that. Do you find situations where you're acting off somebody and you feel like, all right, this person does not get it, or they're not giving you the performance you need for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't worked enough in the film industry to like have too many of those scenarios, but like sometimes I'll want to do like I want to riff a little bit, like do a little bit of stuff that's off book, but like some of these people are just they're not having that. Whether they're so hell bent on the script that they're too rigid to do like any improv, or not even improv, like just like being in the moment. And then there's people who are just like bad actors. There's nothing you can do about those guys. There's
that too. And you said you took acting. Did you take acting classes?
Yeah. I graduated with a second major in theater, and then I've been taking acting classes with the Actors Lab with Brian Fox, and that's for film. That's been awesome.
Oh yeah? Tell me about that. You feel like that's really helping you?
Yeah, dude. I mean, acting class is like the open mics. You have to do it. It does cost like money, it's a class. You're basically going to school in a sense, but you're going in every single week. You're either doing a scene or you're doing like a mock audition, something that would resemble what you would be doing if you were actually auditioning for a TV show or, whatever, like something in film. And it's just so nice to come in every single week with something you're working on, talk to people, you build that network. Yeah.
Did they let you pick the material you want to try out?
Yeah, I mean, they have like a whole list of scenes you can use, but like I can also bring in my own material. Like for instance, if I know that I'm working on an audition or if I'm working on a film, like I'm working on a student film this weekend, I can bring in a scene from that film and be like, hey, could I work on this instead of doing like a different scene? They'll be like, hell yeah. And even like my original works too. Like I've written some scenes that I filmed just for my reel, and we've brought those in as well to try them out. It really is a great class.
Have you tried getting into writing, like not just roles for yourself, just like, roles in general, like maybe like a sketch or even like an idea for a pilot you maybe want to film?
Yeah, I do have a screenplay that is in its fourth draft.
Oh, okay. That's sweet. How long have you been working on that?
I finished the first draft in like first week of September. So I worked on it. I started probably in like late summer, and And I had this like the first 3 drafts were pretty similar. They were just like really cleaning up the first idea. And then I had this like crazy like change of the whole story. I was like, fuck, now I have to do that. So I do the whole 4th draft. And I know there's going to be a 5th draft, but I'm happy with where I'm at right now.
So because I said before, when I first saw you, you seemed like a very like almost professional kind of guy. Do you consider yourself, are you very structured when it comes to like writing? Like, do you have like a whole like system you have prepared for it? Because for someone like me with really bad ADHD, it's just every fucking day I'm like trying to force myself to do something, but then the dopamine receptors in my brain are like, nah, bro, you should totally make a protein shake right now.
Yeah.
You should play a guitar for a little bit. All right, you did a sentence. Oof, that was tough. Time to take a break. So
Yep.
do you feel like you're like pretty like structured? Like, do you have a whole system for yourself when you write?
Oh yeah. I mean, I am very structured when it comes to writing. I mean, comedy, not as much, but definitely like my screenplay. I followed the exact same structure as like the Blake Snyder's book Save the Cat, which is like a huge book on screenwriting.
Yep.
I've looked at Dan Harmon, who's the writer of Rick and Morty. I've looked at his story circle, and I actually I've written out every single part of that story circle and written, okay, where does my screenplay fall into that?
What would you consider to be like a great like screenplay? Something like maybe you saw like a movie or a theater performance and you were like thinking back on it, and you're like, Jesus Christ, that was tight as a drum. There was no wasted space there.
Well, I mean, I have two thoughts there. It's surprising, but there is a film in the film industry that people say is like the greatest screenplay ever written. And like, even though it's like, you know, like it's not like anything official, but like it's kind of like one of those like unofficial, like perfect screenplay, and it's Die Hard.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I could have sworn you were about to drop Citizen Kane on me.
No, it's surprising, but Die Hard, I've heard people say is like the greatest screenplay in terms of like it works perfectly from like the start of like every little thing, like when he takes his shoes off in the plane in the very beginning, that ties in like halfway through when he's not wearing shoes and they shoot the glass to like cut his feet. Like everything like ties in. It's very interesting. Have
you read anything on like stuff like directing, like little techniques people use? Because I'm a big Alfred Hitchcock fan. He's my favorite director. And watching like video essays on how he would shoot scenes to convey feelings that you didn't even think about. Like there's a scene in Vertigo with it's Jimmy. I forget the other actor's name, but it's Jimmy Stewart and the other guy. And the other guy is sitting on a couch, and Jimmy Stewart's kind of standing on a platform above him. But as the guy is like convincing Jimmy Stewart to take on this case, they switch places basically. And the guy who was doing the video essay was saying that Hitchcock was establishing there that their roles have reversed. The man who's trying to pitch his case, he's now in power. And it's one of those subtle things you don't think about, but when you look back on it, you're like, holy shit, like this person knew what they were doing. And Star Wars did something similar with A New Hope, with the rebellion ship goes, you know, in front of the camera, and then you see the Empire ship and it just spams the whole screen, and it's so fucking huge, and it like establishes this, because it's also shot at a low angle. It establishes how big the Empire is, what their reach across the galaxy is. So did you watch a lot of stuff on like picking up subtle cues like that?
Yeah, I mean, I watch that for like certain movies. Like one of my favorite movies is The Dark Knight, and of course, and I've seen so many videos on like the analysis, like all the breakdowns, you know, like the character arcs of like the main, you know, of the 3 main characters like Harvey Dent, Joker, and Batman. I've looked at like the acting, all of the shit.
Who would you consider your favorite director?
Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan, really? Mm-hmm. Interesting. What was his last movie? Tenet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how was that?
I really liked it.
You really liked it?
It is an absolute mind fuck.
That's what I was interested in, because it kind of reminded me of Inception a little bit, because with that I think it was an Upside Down City or some shit they were showing off.
Yeah. Have you seen Tenet?
No, I haven't gotten around to it because I've heard mixed things. That's why.
Dude, I mean, for me personally, the reason why I love Christopher Nolan's movies so much is because I do like to really have to pay attention. Like you can't just sit and it's not a popcorn watching movie. You have to fucking get ready. You better have peed before the movie. Like get ready for this shit because like, I mean, Tenet is basically like, hey, aren't time travel movies complicated? Well, fuck that. This is twice as hard.
I mean, you remember when Inception came out, every fucking joke was it's a dream within a dream within a dream. Just because it's complicated doesn't mean it's cool or it doesn't mean it's good, which is such an oversimplification. But I've noticed with Nolan in particular, he definitely has instances where he's definitely a little, I would say a little too dialogue heavy, where it's like The Dark Knight, I love it, but I would say there's a little too many speeches in that movie where characters are saying how they feel rather than acting how they feel. But then apparently Dunkirk, people were saying that he toned that down to the point where they're like, we need can somebody talk, please?
Yeah. Dunkirk, I would say, is like the only Christopher Nolan movie that I don't really like.
Don't really? That's interesting.
I mean, I'm a big fan of like thrillers. So the reason why I like Christopher Nolan is I'm a big fan of like The Dark Knight because it's a crime drama. I'm a big fan of like Memento because that's kind of like like a crime drama, psychological thriller. These types of movies like The Prestige, those are really cool things to me. But when it comes to like war movies, I feel like I've seen it so many times that like once Dunkirk came out, I didn't feel like it brought anything new to the table. Now, I mean, so many people would disagree with me, and they have every right to, but not a huge fan of it.
I mean, like, how many times can you see a movie about World War I or World War II or the Vietnam War before you get to the point where, like, okay, yes, I get it. It was a war. It happened.
Yeah. Like, after Saving Private Ryan, I don't really feel the need to see another war movie.
Right, because when you see something that does it, like, perfectly, you're like, well, we're good then, unless you can do something new. Like, what I kind of liked about Wonder Woman was that, like, yeah, okay, it's a World War I movie, but they threw in a superhero, so a little bit more fun there, and it wasn't, like, focused on the war. It was more about, like, the side journey towards the end of the war. So, like, something like that I can get behind, but I remember, I think the movie was called War Horse, that Steven Spielberg movie, and I watched, like, I think an hour of it, and I fucking fell asleep because I was so bored, because, like, how many times can you watch that? So for yourself, do you prefer doing comedic roles, or do you prefer, like, dramatic roles? Like, do you really feel like you're stretching yourself a little bit more when you have something harder to chew on?
I mean, I definitely, right now in my career, would really like to dive into comedic roles. I'm very excited to do dramatic as well and try everything. But I think in terms of my own career, I would be smart to really hone in on like the comedic side. And then once I am able to break through on that end, to expand to more dramatic.
Right. I like how with acting, I mean, you ever heard Jerry Corley?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that point he made, I think his teacher made to him, where she said, oh, look, Jerry thinks that his jokes are so funny, he doesn't have to perform them. Like, it's one of those things where you think about it, it's like you have to really put emotion into what you're doing on stage, and you can get that more when you're, used to acting behind a camera, when it's like, I have experience doing this, so I can use that to inform my comedic side. And if you have, especially if you have experience with doing comedic roles, like, it informs I would say it probably informs your stand-up even more. So is that a motivating factor, or are you just trying to stay like kind of within the vein of comedy?
Well, first off, before I answer that, I want to say that I bought the Jerry Corley series.
Oh yeah. How is that? I gotta ask, because it's expensive, so I was interested in it. But is it worth the money, you'd say? It's
pretty good. I don't know if it's worth the money, especially at like at our point. You've been doing stand-up for like 8 years?
9.
9? Yeah. I mean, I don't think that he's going to really give you anything extra. What I will say, though, is that if you're looking to do late night, it is useful.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say, here's something I've thought of, like, the last couple of years. Do you feel like late night is kind of dying?
I mean, once again, I never really watched late night.
So the answer is yes, because you're not fucking watching it. I was on a podcast last week, and I was having this conversation with somebody about Netflix, because when we were, coming up, when we were growing up, comedy it started off as I would say HBO and maybe Showtime. And then Comedy Central became the thing. And now Netflix is the thing. But I was telling this guy, and I want to see if you feel the same way, but do you feel like Netflix is kind of dying a little bit and it's going to transition to YouTube? Because the comedians that I've seen on Netflix, like some of them where it's their first special, I watch it and I'm like, this isn't good at all. Like, people would watch like Comedy Central Presents specials and you'd be like, well, no matter how I feel about this person's comedy, they earned this special. But when you see, at least for me, when I see Netflix, I'm kind of like, well, what app did you blow up on? Is it TikTok, Vine? Because this doesn't feel like something that you worked for. I feel like they gave it to you because of your name. And then you look at someone like, say, Mark Norman, who no studio wanted his special out to lunch, so he had to put it on YouTube for free. And all the comments are people just talking about how great it is and how much better it is than anything on Netflix. So do you feel like Netflix is going to fade out and YouTube is going to be where comedy gets posted?
I think it definitely could.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really post many stand-up videos on YouTube or on like Instagram or any of that because like I don't want to show my work and then like have someone, if they wanted to see my show, then realize like, oh, you're just doing the same shit.
I might have mentioned this to you on Saturday. I don't remember. I was on 3 hours of sleep that day. But when I saw Sam Morril last month, he was great, but I knew like every joke because I'm such a big fan of his podcast and his special On the Roof, which he was doing some stuff from that too. So it was like one of those things where it's like, he's great, but I know all this stuff. So for me personally, I found it's good to post like clips of like maybe crowd work or retired jokes. Would that be something you're more comfortable with?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing about YouTube is like, because you can just post anything. If you're going to move everything in comedy to YouTube, you have to be careful about how you're going to present it, because even in Netflix and definitely in HBO and Comedy Central, it's clearly a professional setting where you are telling, hey, like these are my best jokes that I have right now. And most of those comics, after they tell those jokes on Netflix, they retire them, or they retire most of them. But on YouTube, like, are you going to retire your jokes after you tell them on YouTube, or are you going to keep doing them? And also, what if somebody films your set and then that blows up? It's like,
that's a good point. Well, a lot of professionals now, they're having people lock up their phones and stuff, but they're still posting like, clips here and there of like not worked out material. But it does suck when a comedian gets their shit recorded and then leaked, and then it's like, well, that bit's ruined now. Like, I mean, it's cliche to say, but that Louis C.K. Parkland bit where it's like, that probably could have been a really good bit, but because it got shown online and blown up, it was like, well, he didn't get a chance to finish that. But I feel like with YouTube comedy, like you were saying, like when you watch Comedy Central, theater comedy, professional stuff. But I feel like with YouTube, because it's more low budget and more rough around the edges, it gives like this more of this feeling of authenticity, and you just feel like what would be the word for it? I don't fucking know. You just feel like more grounded, like it feels more real. And I think that was what was the initial appeal of YouTube was back in the day, like around 2007, 2008. I mean, what was on YouTube most of the time? It was fucking people sitting in front of their webcam, just, singing fucking Maya He, Maya Who, whatever, Numa Numa, doing like goofy shit. But people gravitated towards that because it just felt so authentic. So do you feel like if comedy went to YouTube and specials started going to YouTube, do you feel like they would feel more authentic and more human than they are when you watch them on TV?
Well, I think that the concept of a special would change. Like, how on YouTube right now we have stuff like Louis C.K. like attacks heckler, or, like Whitney Cummings shuts down heckler, or like crazy audience. I think that those types of videos would come up more. Like you would get 20 minutes of like best crowd work from Andrew Schultz, or, like best jokes about college from Bert Kreischer, whatever, I think that those would be like the mini specials, is like the more categorized stuff. So it's so customized. You're like, oh, I want to watch crowd work right now. Oh, I want to watch this specific special about Black lives in New York,
Right. One thing I like though about the YouTube specials I've been seeing, besides the fact that a lot of them are better than what I'm seeing on Netflix, is that a lot of them have really out there thoughts, and they're like a joke a minute. I don't know. Have you heard of Zoltan Kazans? I think is his name.
That sounds familiar.
He has a special on YouTube, and it's completely clean. Like it is. I don't think he curses. He doesn't say fuck one time throughout the special, and it's filmed from what looks like a fucking GoPro that he stood on a table or something. But the special itself was like actually really like the set was great, and it hit me later that it was all clean, and it was like one of those things that motivated me personally to be like, yo, I should try writing some more clean material because that's something I kind of struggle with. So I want to ask you, do you have like a certain material, a certain humor style that you personally struggle with that you want to do, but you don't feel like you've completely worked it out yet?
Yeah, I know that like a year or two ago, I really did switch over to like more clean comedy just because I felt like I felt like there was not that there's like a prestige to clean comedy, but it's like if you can be funny clean, then you can be funny dirty as well.
Right.
Something that I do struggle with though, once again, of course, the authenticity, but also with that is content that I'm not afraid to have people judge me by. You know, like if I say something a little bit off color that will, that could potentially offend somebody. Like if I did political humor or I brought up humor that was maybe offensive in another way. That is definitely something that I do struggle with. I was just talking to my buddy yesterday. I'm always trying to make people like me. That's my thing. And I have definitely leaned into that more in the last year and a half. And I think it has got me some success in comedy. But at the same time, I think I do need to be a little more risky with my jokes.
I can totally sympathize with that because I remember a couple years ago, I was definitely like, I was such a huge Stanhope fan, and his persona on stage is just rambly garbage. And he's like such a, I would say, degenerate. He's a fucking degenerate, but that's kind of my humor, and that's what I'm into. So I would tell jokes as a degenerate, like the jokes could be working, they could not be working. But what's the problem with that is like the difference between me and Stanhope. But Stanhope has a fan base where they know he's a degenerate, they know he's a piece of human garbage, so they go in expecting that, and they're getting what they want. But when you're just somebody at a comedy club that nobody knows, you're someone at an open mic no one knows, and you're doing that persona, people will just think, oh, what an unlikable asshole. They don't give a fuck what your influence is. And then I guess in your case, like, you said you're trying to be like professional almost, or just you're trying to be not necessarily clean, but like have this aura, I should say, of knowing what you're doing. There's definitely, when you're in a bar, it's so easy for somebody in the crowd to look at you and be like, well, this guy thinks he's better than me. I'm sitting here on my Monday night and he's here in his fucking nice fucking shirt. He just ironed it. Tell me about his nice job. Fuck him. But that's, so like I could totally sympathize with that struggle. Do you feel like you're getting better with it though, in terms of like us? Yeah, like you said, you're working on being present, but do you also feel like you're getting better at presenting yourself the way you are, but also dipping into that edge that you've been working on?
Yeah, I'm getting there. I haven't really tried too hard because I've still been reaping the benefits of like doing cleaner stuff. Like it's been working, so I'm like, well, why stop now? But I find myself sometimes, not saying jokes, like maybe not even trying them, because I just feel like, like I don't know enough about this topic. It's like, well, I gotta go out and bomb. Like I just have to try it and have it not work. So then I can be like, okay, here's what I really need to do. So then I can make a good joke that is real. My buddy and I were talking about this, that, I can make these jokes, but they're so safe and they're not reflective of what is happening in the real world.
Right. Do you ever have instances where like you sit down to write and you have like a goal of the day where you're like, I'm going to just do clean shit today, or another day where you're like, I want to do stuff about maybe urban stuff, so like stuff that I'm not too familiar with? Like, you ever have like daily goals when you're writing?
I don't focus too hard on like those specific types of goals. Like for comedy, because I do prioritize acting first over comedy. I don't dedicate the same type of energy towards comedy like probably you do, or like some more people who are focusing more heavily on it. So like most of my writing really comes in like just free form, like however it comes to me, I have to write it down. If there's any structure, yeah, I don't really focus on like a specific topic. Sometimes I'll think of like, I'll hone down on like crowd work, or I'll hone down on like something more general, but I don't get too nitty gritty like that.
Right. Okay. I can see why you'd have, if you prefer fucking acting to comedy, I can see why, especially because acting is such a more, I would say, involved process, because you really have to put more energy into that. But what you were saying about like, you know, you have free flowing thoughts, like, because I remember back in like 2017, I definitely had a lot of instances where I had free flowing thoughts that were really funny, but when you remove them from my stream of consciousness and you just throw them out of my mouth, it just sounds like a mishmash of garbage that has a funny idea in there, but it doesn't have a structure to it. So I'm just saying something. And if you remove, like, say you remove the word fuck from it, it doesn't work at all. Because I actually quit doing comedy for almost 2 years in like 2018, because I noticed that with myself, was like I was coming up with material that it was working, but I didn't like it because it didn't feel like I felt like I was just coasting off of vulgarity rather than actually having something substantial to say. And then when I did things like maybe look at Jerry Corley's book, listen to Judy Carter's book, Stephen something whatever's book, like it lets you know like how to frame the framework to put your comedy in. So you look back at those garbage things that you thought of, that stream of conscious that you had that you thought was funny, but then it lets you structure it in a way where it's like, okay, this is definitely a joke. But that's because my sense of humor is just rambly vulgarity. But because you have you definitely have a different sensibility than me. So do you feel like your stream of conscious, like when it comes to you, when the jokes come to your head, do you feel like they're already like pretty close within a classic joke structure, or do you feel like you got to tweak them a little bit when you first get them?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I'll think of jokes right before I go to sleep. I'm like, this is the greatest joke that anyone's ever written ever. And then I wake up in the morning, I'm like, why the fuck did I even write that?
Yeah.
But then even still, I'll be like, this joke is still amazing. Fuck that. And then I'll go on stage and be like, nope, wasn't good. I was right. So I have that, but I usually think of, a lot of times I will think of punchlines first, and then I'm like, oh, now I got to make a premise to match that, which is like good in the sense of like one-liners, like, but at the same time, I find myself pigeonholing myself in like random premises that like, if I actually thought of a better premise up front, I could come up with a much better punchline or several punchlines.
Do you have like because I definitely noticed with myself, there's certain topics that I'm like kind of repetitive with, but like the joke is like solid, but it's like a subject I have a lot of jokes on. But especially recently, you know, I try out those jokes in different areas, and one part of the joke may hit and then another one doesn't hit. And then the same thing with a different joke. But then I find out that I can just mishmash parts of two different jokes together, and it becomes this unique entity that's completely separate from my writing, or like completely separate from the original subject that just works. So do you find yourself having like do you think you have like repetitive subjects that you hit on?
Yeah. I mean, because it's probably because I just got out of college. I have a lot of material surrounding college, you know, surrounding college parties, surrounding like relationships in college, and sometimes that hits really well. And there's, you know, there are people who are like older, or they don't really care about that type of humor, that it doesn't ring as much with. But once again, the same as what you said, there's certain things that really do well. And it may be because the topic is college, but the theme is something deeper. You know, the theme may be like being vulnerable, or like being insecure around peers, you know, as opposed to it's, you know, it's in the cloak of college, but it's really about this. So I think that finding those things, like where the deeper theme is more relatable to everyone, that's what will hit everywhere.
So since obviously you've seen yourself on recorded a million times, do you look back on say a stand-up performance and notice like, okay, I'm giving off this vibe, so I should maybe try to write something that fits that vibe, or maybe I should adjust my stage presence first?
Yeah. I used to, I mean, like when I started out, like everyone, I said a lot of hacky shit, like about sex. And like, I still, like some of that is still like in my act, like if I, in my whole repertoire that I would still say. And that vibe is not my favorite. And I would really, and like, I look back at some videos and I'm like, I don't really feel like that represents me anymore. So like, if I'm going to bring that joke up again, it has to be in the frame of how I now present myself.
I know exactly how you feel. There's like certain like jokes because I have like some clips that I have there. I look back at them and I'm like, that's just not me anymore. But it's a good joke. So it's like, how do I adjust this? Because this joke is like, sometimes you look back and it's like a timeless joke that could still work, but it's got to fit you because that's something that came from a 19-year-old's perspective and it's like a solid thing. But if I said that now, people would be like, what do you grow up?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, why are you saying that after you said that other thing?
Right, exactly. So tell me about this project that you've got coming up, this Kickstarter, or is it an Indiegogo?
Yeah. So my buddy and I, we co-wrote a film and I starred in it. He directed and produced it, called Diamond in the Rough. That was last summer. It's on YouTube. It's now in, we've submitted to a bunch of festivals, but now we're coming back with our second film. He and I are co-producing it. He's directing it. I'll be playing a smaller role in it. And then we actually brought in a friend of ours who was going to he wrote the script. That is called The Associate. And this time we're bringing in like an incredible class, like a cast of people, a lot of people from my acting class from the Actors Lab. And then we have an award-winning cinematographer. But now these things cost money. Yeah. So we're trying, the last film we did off of like almost a $0 budget, but now we're going to try to go for a $4,000 budget. So we have this Kickstarter right now. It is $2,000 because if you don't make the money in your deadline, you actually don't get to keep any of the money.
Right. Okay. So you set yourself to a fixed funding campaign.
Yeah. Yeah. So it holds us accountable to really like make sure that we hit the goal. And also the people who like donate, their money doesn't go out of their bank account until we actually successfully like get everything.
See, those are my favorite kind of projects where it's like, we have to commit to this or nothing, because that lets the audience know and the contributors know that you're being genuine. Because I definitely see some GoFundMes and where it's like, what the fuck is this? Why are you doing this? But this is something, and then, with a GoFundMe, I don't think you get your money back if you donate, but this is like something you're really committing to the project. So one last thing I want to ask you before I let you go, because I've taken up enough of your time. What would you consider to be your proudest moment as either an actor, a comedian, a project you look back on and you're like, fuck yeah, that's what motivates me?
Ooh, there are some good moments. I will say it was like the perfect combination of my acting and stand-up. Have you ever heard of devised theater?
I don't think so, no.
It's basically where a group of people will, in one way or another, depending on your tactics, will create a show together, a play. So my senior year of college, it was like a class of 30 of us, through just doing many different like scenes, like just making stuff up like on the spot, a lot of improv, a lot of this and that. We made an entire like 2-hour play, and it was good enough that it made it into the this theater festival for college kids in Maryland. And I played this character that I created who sucked. Like there was like an open mic and everyone who was there was actually just doing like poetry and spoken word, and I was doing stand up, but it was like shitty stand up. So it was like funny because it was so bad.
Right.
And I went on stage and the audience was loving everything they had gotten up to this point. And when I got on stage and was doing that bullshit, people were roaring. Like there was like, I think there was like 400, 500 people in the audience, and they were just eating it up, dude. And when I was in that moment, it was just like every single laugh was like a whoa. Like it just made me realize like, damn, like this is what it could be like every single time if you put in like the hard work.
Definitely. And some people, they don't want to put in the hard work. They feel like it's just going to be easy. No, there's a fucking craft to what we do. And I mean, that bit you do about I think I told you this a million times, but that COVID bit you do is so well structured, so well written. And then the act out you do as the old man, it's such a perfect encapsulation, I think, of all your talents put together in one bit, because it is so solid. I love it every time you tell it. I don't give a fuck if I've heard it before. I'm still laughing every time I see it. So, where can people find you on social media, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Instagram at Sean Michael Conway. You can find me on Facebook as Sean Conway, YouTube Sean Conway. I'm on TikTok, but I don't really use it.
Yeah.
And then my Kickstarter is under my name, Sean Michael Conway. It's the associate film, if anyone would be interested in donating.
All right, that sounds awesome. So thank you so much for coming on here, dude. I know, like I said, I'm a little bit rambly because I'm still working out the kinks of this podcast, but I really appreciate you coming on. You are one of the first people from the Water's Edge I wanted on because of just who you are as a person, and your comedy is something I just really fucking respect. So guys, thank you guys for watching. Give Sean Conway again, thank you for coming on, dude.
Thanks for having me, boss.
Of course, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of the Pixel Trash Podcast.